you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Freelancer Show. This week on our panel, we've got Jonathan Stark.
Hello there.
And I'm Reuven Lerner. And we're going to talk this week about free advice. But before we do that, we just want to do a little bit of, as Jonathan said before the call, housekeeping. So we are currently on episode number 292. And for those of you who are math challenged, that means that only 8 more episodes. Right, we're computer people here, so the only numbers we know are 0, 1, and infinity. So before we get to episode number 300, we're going to try to do something special with it. And we're still working out exactly what the specialness will be. But if you, dear listener, have questions, ideas, memories, things, maybe things that we have done on the show that have not tanked your business. That's to say, advice that we've given that perhaps has been helpful. We would greatly, greatly appreciate hearing from you. And we'll put together some sort of compilation of this as part of our 300th anniversary, 300th episode celebration.
Yeah.
So yeah, by the way, where should they send it to us? Is there a good email address for us? I don't even know that.
That's fine. People can send it to me if they want. The address is jstark@jonathanstark.com.
There we go. That made it easy. Was there something else we want to take care of? I can't remember what it was. I don't think so.
No, I think that's good.
Excellent. So, basically, I told Jonathan the story. So I'll tell all of you folks to give some context to where this topic came up. So, as you all know, I do a lot of training and mostly teaching them Python. And every so often, someone will come in and say, "Hey, I use this and this and this. What do you think?" And if it's just like a minute or two worth of sort of, I would say, even follow on to my course, that's not a problem. I see that as like a no-brainer to do. But a few days ago, I got a message from someone who I know at a company I teach at saying, "Hey, when are you next going to be around? Because my group is having some issues with Python and we're thinking of moving to Java, but really we'd prefer to stay with Python. So we're looking for optimization help. And maybe we can just talk about it for a bit." And that kind of set off my alarms because my feeling was they see me as the Python guy. And so if I happen to be around, they'll just sort of get advice from me. And on the one hand, I was sort of struggling with how to respond because on the one hand, I don't want to seem like a greedy pig. Oh, if I'm going to talk to you and it's not in a class, then I want money. On the other hand, I mean, presumably whatever process they're going to change or improve, it's going to save them money and potentially tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars. I mean, this is a company that uses Python to do testing of their hardware. And we're talking like millions of pieces of hardware that they sell every year. So if it's involved in testing that, it's potentially saving them quite a lot, not only in terms of hardware, but in terms of salaries and so forth. So I sent him a message saying, well, you have to understand, like, basically, if I'm going to save you money, then I would expect to get paid for that just because, like, I'm giving you some business benefit. The upshot is basically during a break today, before I even had a chance to really talk to this guy, and he was very understanding. He said, "Oh, I totally get what you're saying. I'll come talk to you during the day." But before he did, someone else from his group did. And they hadn't really talked about the fact that they would both talk to me. So I don't see this as a conspiracy. But this other guy came to me, asked me a question. I sort of figured out what was going on. I said, here's a quick answer. Blah, 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 blah. And that was the end of that. But it did raise the question in my mind of, how do I separate these things? How do I come off sounding professional, not a jerk, and not basically end up being sort of a fount of wisdom at no extra price. And part of the problem is also that I see courses as productized consulting, meaning I'm coming in, I'm giving you a product. And when you're asking for consulting advice, then it's something above and beyond that particular product. And for that delta, I should be getting something. And yet the people who are, as I've discovered in these sets of conversations, the people who are sort of mid-level engineers, mid-level managers, they don't think about money, right? They have a problem to solve. Oh, we have a problem. Let's try to solve as best as possible. Here's a guy who knows who might be able to help us out. He likes solving problems. Like, let's go do that. And so I don't think they're being nasty or evil or mean. I just think they're sort of blind to the business side of things. And it took a little while for me to come up with a sort of coherent answer to him, which turned out to be very long. And he was understanding, but it wasn't a 1, 2, 3 thing. So that's the sort of setup for how to deal with this sort of thing. And I know I have friends who are doctors and lawyers and accountants who get similar sorts of questions. There's like an old joke, like questionnaire that you give up for high holidays at services, for Jewish holidays. They're like, I would like to be seated next to check one or more, doctor, lawyer, dentist, accountant, right? To get free advice basically in synagogue as you say next to them. So this is not a unique situation, but it's one that probably need to think about a little bit. So there you go. So Jonathan, now that I've set it up.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I have a very particular stance on this kind of thing, and it's not popular with everyone, and I don't think it's the only right answer, but it works for me, which is having that, as you point out, you don't want to look like a mercenary. You don't want to appear super transactional. And knowing you, I'm sure you'd like to help. I mean, it's in your nature. So, the flip side is, this is valuable to them. So therefore, to be fair, you should get paid, but the person who you're talking to doesn't think like that. So they don't even realize that they're asking you, I want to say being rude. They're not really being rude because they don't know it, but maybe being a little bit insensitive or ignorant to the situation. So this kind of thing comes up a lot. Sometimes it's, hey, can we get coffee? I want to bounce some ideas off you, that kind of thing. And my stance is I'm going to, if the answer is obvious and quick, I'm just going to give it to them. Because I think of it more in the long game where if in 5 minutes, if I was able to give them an answer that saved them $1 million, then presumably I'm going to stand out in their mind for a particular kind of assistance that at some point they might want to engage me for. So I look at it more as like almost one-to-one content marketing. And I'll give away the store if I can do so without doing any homework, without investigating their situation at all, without really giving them any unique information. If I'm just giving them rules of thumb and guidelines and best practices, they can find that on the internet anyway. So, and that's one of the things I wanted to bring up as you were talking. You were like, oh, I could save them $1 million in 5 minutes. That's true, but so could other people, right? There are options. There's a high availability of options in the Python expertise space. They could get Guido probably, or whatever his name is. So, the guy that created Python.
Yes.
So you can't just automatically, not you, Reuven, but in general, you can't just magically say, oh, well, I'll probably save you $1 million with this, so I can definitely charge you $100,000, because they're like, well, we could get any Python expert. You just happen to be standing here. So it's not like you can just automatically value price every single thing. If they have available options, then it changes the dynamic a little bit. So I see it as an opportunity to set myself apart from all of the other experts who kind of do what I do and say, oh yeah, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Here's 3 things you can try. Let me know how it goes. If it doesn't work out, we could set up something a little more formal, but that might get you what you need. Boom, done. So no need to make a big deal out of it. But if they're like, well, let me tell you my situation, like, well, if you want to set up a meeting, or, if it turns into a long diatribe of them brain dumping for like 25 minutes, or if it seems like it's going to, I'd be like, well, now's not a great time for this. I can't really process all this information like on the fly. If you want to set up, convene a meeting of decision makers and people involved with the thing, I could give you maybe a better answer, but we'd have to put something formal in place to do that. Or another thing you can do is say it depends, because often it does. So like I've got 2 doctors in the family, and they are frequently hit on for, it's not uncommon for them to get a text message from someone else in the family like, can I send you a picture of a rash? It's like, tell me if I should go to the, or whatever. And they're very careful in that situation. Of course, they need to be, because they don't, they want to be helpful, but they don't want to give you bad advice. And the answer almost always kind of like, well, it's probably nothing, but you should probably make an appointment with your doctor anyway. Or if it's still there in 3 days, you should definitely make an appointment with your doctor. I don't think you need to worry about it, but I don't really know. I can't really tell. And so they don't completely remove the worry. They don't tell you exactly what to do. And in their case, they've got a governing body that enforces that kind of behavior. And as consultants, we really don't. I think we should, but we don't. So it's sort of incumbent on us to, flip it around the other way. Reuven, let's say you didn't care about this and you wanted to give them tons of advice. What if it was bad? And they blew something up, or, they just was terrible. So you could kind of just respond to it with, if you can't respond to it very quickly with, in under a minute, let's say, with a few best practices that they could go try. And if it doesn't work, get back to me. You could say, well, it's really hard to say. It depends. I don't want to send you running off with a loaded gun. It depends on things that would take, I would have to do a real investigation. It would have to be a more diagnostic engagement. I would need to look at your environment. And I'm saying, assuming this is all true, I'm not saying say this just to get them to pay you.
Right.
If it's all true and you can't really give them a good answer without, let's say meeting with their lead developer or viewing their AWS installation or whatever, it's like, well, I don't know. It depends on a couple of things. If your environment is set up like this, then it might work for you to do X. If your environment isn't set up like that, or your developers aren't super advanced or whatever, you don't have a DevOps team, then you might want to try this other approach. But with anything that's really valuable, I think, and there's a low availability of options. So things that are high risk and require a lot of trust in the person giving the advice, it's almost always going to depend on a bunch of factors that you can't get across in like a 5 or 10 minute conversation. So I just opt to give away anything I can that doesn't really require me to investigate their situation deeply, so best practice type stuff, and just be like, here you go. I probably have a blog post on it already anyway. Just like, here you go, check out this blog post or whatever. And if they feel like they got value out of that, then it's just my belief that when the going gets rough and things get much more complicated, then that you're the first person on the list they're going to call. They're not even going to consider other people. So now you set yourself apart from your competitors.
Right. I'd say all that is true. I think in general, when people, if people just come up to me and say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a quick question? Then I'm like, sure, whatever, for basically that reason. This was, I think, a little different just because the guy contacted me in advance and he said, hey, when are you next around so we can set up a time to talk? And the moment I hear that, I think, oh boy, and it even sounded like he wanted to have lunch with me, like during my lunch hour, to sort of talk to me about it. And again, he's not a bad guy. I totally understand where he's coming from. He saw this as an opportunity. But the moment I think about that, I think, oh, this is more than just like a 2-3 minute thing. And I like your approach to it, which is basically like, if it's fast, then give the answer. And if it's not fast, then tell them so and say, look, I'll need some more time and we should set something more formal.
Right.
And that also allows me to have an easy out, right? Like I can say to them, sure, if it's, let's talk. And then I can, during that, so I can be nice and generous and helpful and help people as necessary. But it also means that if shortly in the conversation I realize it's going to be long, then I haven't put them off at the beginning. I put them off after demonstrating that I'm serious about trying to help them.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's I don't know if it's the same. Yeah, I think it's actually a different issue, which is the person wanting to schedule a time. Like, I don't have a hard time saying no to that stuff. Hey, can we get coffee? I wanted to bounce a couple ideas off you. I have no problem being like, I'm not going to be able to do that. But if you do have a question, you can send it to me over email or some other asynchronous kind of method. I almost never will agree to, even when someone just wants to hang out, I will almost never agree to get together just to shoot the breeze. It's not part of my lifestyle. So to me, that's a separate thing. Whether or not you'd be delivering value in the conversation and setting up the appointment, to me personally, are two different things. So in that situation, and it's kind of awkward because you were actually there in person, which normally wouldn't be.
And I bumped into him, by the way.
Right.
It turns out that he was at a meeting and I was finishing teaching him. As I walked out, he was literally right there in the hallway. Mm-hmm. So he was like, "Oh, good." Yes. I sort of caught up with him. Mm-hmm. But right. It wasn't like we had to go anywhere special to meet with him either.
Right. So it is a little awkward, but I mean, it's perfectly reasonable. I think anybody, whether, you talked before about them being sort of employees and not understanding the business implications of what they're asking you to do. But I think anybody can understand that, I need my time. I'm in the middle of something. I can't have this conversation right now. I'm happy to have this conversation over email or at some point in the future. But now's not a great time. I'm coming out of training. I can't shift gears that fast. I'm not going to be able to give you a good answer. Need some time to think about it. Or I have to go to the bathroom, or I'm hungry, or I have another appointment. I mean, there's a million ways that you can, with perfect honesty, get out of that situation, and that are completely separate from the fact that you would prefer not to give away large amounts of business value for free. So to me, it's two separate things.
Right. By the way, you mentioned something about you probably have an answer on your blog. So on occasion, when people have emailed me after courses asking me questions, and like, "Oh, I hope you don't mind if I ask you this." I mean, first of all, I'm just terrible getting back to people with email. I'm so backed up with it. Better than I used to be. Like every week is better, but often what I'll do is sometimes when this happens, I'll simply write a blog post about it, answering their question, and then point them to that. Because then I figure, well, like everyone's getting something out of it. They're getting the answer they wanted, but I'm also helping more people. I'm getting my name out more. People will point to it, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Right. I do something very similar on my email list and in my group coaching Slack. So depending on how we are engaged, so if someone is not a customer, they're just a member of my list, and they send me a question. A lot of times, if I just have it's the kind of situation where I've got an answer that I always give. It's really easy for me to just type it out real quick, 1-2 sentences, and reply. I'm going to do that. If, however, it's a little bit more involved and it's going to require, it's a meatier topic. If it's a meatier topic versus should I use Drip or MailChimp? But if it's a meatier topic like how do I respond to someone who's asking for freebies all the time, then I would reply and say, hey, would it be okay if I, it's totally fine to say no, but it would be okay if I shared your question with the list and I can answer it there. And virtually always, I can think of no situation where someone said no. I think maybe one time somebody said no because they had their client was also on my email list. But they, almost always they say, yeah, please go ahead. And like you said, when I do that, it's benefiting more than just the one person. It's beneficial to everyone. It's also beneficial to me because I'm adding value to the list, which is an important asset that I have. Same thing with group coaching. So somebody will sign up for either group coaching or a coaching call, which gives them access to me in a Slack room, but it's not private access. So if they DM me or email me with questions, I say, oh, this is a great question. Would you mind putting it in the general channel in the Slack room that we're in so that everybody can benefit from the answer? And, and that's what they do. And everyone's always cool with that. So, the higher my highest tier offering, that is when you get private one-on-one phone calls. That's when you get private DMs, and it's people who need to share things like specific financials and negotiations with clients and that sort of thing. They can do that there and know that it's going to be private and not shared. It's stuff that can't be shared. No one else can benefit. I mean, people would benefit from it greatly, but they're paying for the privacy and the one-on-one attention. So,
Right.
For me, overall, I would look at it as an opportunity to, it feels like a content marketing opportunity to me in many ways, even if it is one-on-one, as long as it's zero effort. That's the thing. Like it's almost zero cost to me for someone to say, hey, should I bill by the hour or something? Be like, no, you shouldn't.
You'll have to think hard about that one.
Right. I can think of no situation where okay, that's not true. I can think of one situation where that's a good thing to do, but it's very short term and it's not a business building proposition. Anyway, so I can point them to a bunch of places. I can tell them to get on my mailing list and ask me there, in which case I'll probably answer to the whole list. Trying to funnel them into, I didn't explicitly point out what I was describing here. If you have a free option, you can always point them there. So if you do have some kind of community, free or inexpensive community where you discuss things like this, then you could point them there and say to these guys, I know this isn't the case with you, but if it was someone who wanted to ask me a million questions, I would say, I can't do this right now. My head's not in the right space, but if you want to go to expensiveproblem.com/list, you can jump on my mailing list and you can ask me as many questions there as you like, as long as you're okay with me, kind of answering them in public to the rest of the list. So there's a free option. If that's not cool, if you don't want to wait and you don't want to have your questions shared publicly, then here's this other option. You point to a productized service, which is a nice reason to have productized services. Because you can quickly say to a person like this, yep, it's a perfectly reasonable question. And I've got just the thing for you. There's a URL to it on my business card, and you can go there and see if that's going to be a good fit for you. It's built exactly for clients like you in this particular situation. So I know you don't have that, Reuven, in this case, but that is a great application of having productized services because it gives you a really easy answer to this kind of thing.
Right, for sure.
Our friend Kurt Elster has a very sort of polite but clear, unambiguous answer to this question when someone sends him an email. Hey, could we jump on a call to pick your brain? He's like, sure! ! Here's a link to my Clarity page where they have to pay 90 cents a minute or whatever, $5 a minute to talk to him. He's like, yep, definitely. Here you go. And of course, they never get back to him. But, having a quick answer, I think, is really whatever answer it is. I think it makes it seem more polite and normal if you don't hem and haw them. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. And then you're kind of the whole time you're kind of begrudgingly answering their question.
Right. This client in particular, really, they're great to work with. I work with them a ton. I just found out they're building a 7-story building. So they're going to be hiring tons more people, which means way more training for me in the future. So I'm happy. But it's all training. It's no consulting. Mm-hmm. And there was a possibility for me doing some consulting for them as well. And I met with them and everything was great. And then they asked for a price quote and I gave it to them and silence. And I'm guessing basically, as I've often found, the people who fund training and the people who fund consulting are two different departments with two different budgets. And while the training, and I priced it literally the same amount, per, and you can close your ears for a moment, per block of time. And basically, they clearly thought that this was way too expensive in terms of consulting work. Okay, fine. So they got a free meeting out of it. Mm-hmm. And I had to travel an hour and a half in each direction. So yeah, that really bugged me. I was sure that it was going to lead to it, but fine. Mm-hmm. Could have been worse.
When you start a new project, typically you need things like a domain name, hosting, things like that. When I choose hosting, I pick mine for the options it gives. I like to know what I'm getting and set things up just how I like them. This is why for your projects, you should check out Linode. Linode servers feature native SSD storage, a 40 gigabyte network, and Intel E5 processors. That's all the power you need to run VMs under full control, or Docker containers, who doesn't love that, encrypted disks, and VPNs. Plus, they have 10 data centers across the world and add-ons like backups, Node Balancer, and Longview to help you control your server costs. They also offer block storage for your static files, and you can get started with a $20 credit if you use the code FreelancerShow2018. That credit is good for 4 months on their 1 gigabyte server. That's a lot of time to try them out and see if they're the right fit for you. That code again is FreelancerShow2018. Also, if you're interested in working for Linode, they're hiring. Head to linode.com/careers to see their available positions.
Yeah, I mean, I've jumped on planes for meetings like that, but I do make pretty sure, like explicitly, that there's a real business opportunity here. Like, are the decision makers going to be there? If we can, have a handshake in the meeting, are we good to go? Are all the people going to be there that need to be there to get started? Is there actually a budget allocated for this work already, or are you guys still in the thinking phase? That kind of thing. So yeah, I'm super. I mean, on the one hand, I will jump on a plane for what looks like a likely business opportunity, but I do find out how likely I think it is before I do it. And it's pretty rare.
Yeah, I was sure this was going to happen. I was totally sure this was going to happen. And then, oh, well, all right, I can't win them all. They've paid me enough over the years, and they will continue to, that I can't begrudge. One meeting, not so bad.
Right. Okay. I mean, if they've shown a pattern, then I would, over time, I would probably be less and less likely to, to continue doing that. I just feel like, oh, you know what? I'm not doing consulting anymore. I'm just focused on training, and just wave it off.
Right.
That's a good point, though. If it's chronic, that's a completely different situation. Like if it's not, if somebody's repeatedly, basically you get to do this with me once. If you want to ask me a question once and I can answer it pretty quickly, then I'm happy to do so. But if it becomes a pattern, I'm going to either I'm going to point them at someone else, or I'm going to say, hey, this is a perfect fit for my retainer. This is exactly what my retainer engagement is designed for. If you guys would like to check that out and let me know, that'd be great. Here's a link to it. I'll check back with you in a week to see if I haven't heard back and see what you think. I have this set up as a product. So if somebody wants to just pick my brain on a semi-regular basis, then they're going to get a sales page in reply eventually. But first I want to demonstrate that it's valuable. I want to be able to impress them. I want them to feel like, I'm different than other people. I don't know. It's, I suppose it's a fine line, but the first impression, I think the first impression that you sensed you might give off of being a mercenary is accurate and would never lead to business. It's very hard to imagine that leading to business and even if it did lead to business, it would be with someone who was looking for mercenaries, and they are always going to be price sensitive. So here's the flip side of it. When oftentimes I've had past clients, or even, I think this probably even happened. Yeah, this has even happened in cases where people who are not yet clients who email me and explicitly say that they value my time and they understand that they're asking for something, and they want to be clear. Look, I'm not asking for something for nothing here. Be happy to pay you for your time if you like. Yeah, I don't know how that works with you, but I would be happy to do that. And they kind of point out that they are sensitive to the fact that that is my product. Advice is my product. So, a lot of times merely saying that is enough to get me to be like, it's cool. We can jump on a phone call, like 15-minute call or whatever. Just see if there's a fit, see if there's anything I can actually help with, that sort of thing. But again, if they were like, cool, that was great, and then 2 weeks later I get another one, then they're getting a retainer page.
Right. In my case with this company, I'm convinced that they, like, the right hand and left hand, no idea that they both talked to me about doing some consulting work. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure that the budgeting is done through a totally different department, consideration, and so on and so forth. And yeah, they tend to be very price sensitive on that. I mean, again, that's one of the reasons why I so enjoy doing training, because the price sensitivity goes away to a large degree. In many ways, because I'm competing not with other individuals, but with large training companies who have massive overhead. So it's like, basically, they figure they're going to pay the same amount to whatever company does the training. They couldn't care less if I have a staff of 10 people or staff of one person.
Right. Exactly. In many ways, it's better that you have one, because they're talking to like the right person all the time. There's no telephone tag, none of that.
Right. And if we need to schedule things like the way I schedule stuff with some of these companies, I just email them and I say, how about these dates? And they email me back and say, great, done. And I can't believe how multi-billion-dollar companies do business, but I'm not going to complain.
Right. So the thing, I think we should mention that, or at least I'd like to point out that I am a 100% fan of Blair Enns and his Win Without Pitching manifesto. And I want to make it abundantly clear that I do not think you ever should pitch for work. That is never a good idea. I can't think of a situation where that's a good idea. I mean, basically you're screaming, it screams desperation, which means you're going to be competing on price. You've given up or lost all power in the negotiation. You're basically just, a puppet on a string at that point. If you're spending, a weekend preparing a pitch deck for a meeting with somebody, no, that is not allowed. You're not allowed to do that.
Oh my God.
In my world.
I've looked at Win Without Pitching briefly, but I seem to remember some of the ideas from there, but I don't think I have meetings with people. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, but I've had meetings with people, talk to them about potential projects and, send them email with a proposal. But I can't imagine putting together a pitch deck. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do people do that?
Yeah. My wife used to be in advertising, and I one weekend helped her and her team just go through the most dreadful exercise of putting together like a printed, on Sunday night, we were at a printer doing a press run to have this book printed out that they were going to bring to a meeting to maybe get some work on Monday. And the client was huge. It was like a huge national retail chain, but still, you come in with that, you're basically saying, we will do anything for this work. You can tell us to stand on our hands and we will do it. And that to me is not the way to do it. That is a recipe for disaster, frankly. That's a recipe for getting bossed around in the relationship. Like if the client is bossing you around in the sales process when they have zero power over you, what do you think it's going to be like when they are giving you money? It's going to be way, way harder to say no to their demands. And so then you turn into an order taker. And if you're supposedly the expert at the thing that they're hiring you for, whether it's web development or copywriting or whatever, if they say, maybe you could just throw together a sample website for us over the weekend and we can take a look at it and let you know if we think you're good or not. And you do that, he's like, no, that's a terrible client. Anybody who would even ask that's terrible, but still, let's just say they're ignorant. You could say to them, no, I don't do that. So if that's what you're looking for, then, I'm not a good fit. I can, maybe you should go to Fiverr or something like that. And just be like, no, thanks. Of course, it's difficult if you need the work and all those things. If you're desperate for the money, then you actually are desperate. You're not just appearing desperate. You actually are desperate. And that is the one scenario where I give students permission to go find an hourly gig to keep the lights on, get your keep the lights on money. If you have clients who are sitting there ready to pay you by the hour, fine, go do it as a short-term cash flow stopgap. But make sure that you've got hours left over in the week to, maybe 20 hours left over every week that aren't billable that you can spend working on the business, so you no longer have to take hourly clients in the future. And you can kind of level up your profits and your level of engagement with your clients. So that's the one exception. That's the only time I find myself saying, go ahead, take an hourly gig. It's sitting right there. Just make sure it doesn't suck up all your time, because then you're just kicking the can down the road. So anyway, no pitching, please.
It's funny for me. Like, I mean, I guess I remember once having to do this sort of pitching with someone else, like it's sort of a competition. That was so many years ago. And I saw Mad Men, right, where that was like the essence of what they had to do, where they had to wow the potential client. I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of like having to sort of come across as the expert rather than someone who's going to take orders. At the same time, and maybe I'm totally wrong here. Maybe we're getting a little off topic too, but like I have to imagine that there are certain industries where they're just so used to working that way that it's weird for them not to. Where they're going to bring in, 3 companies. And now you might just say, I don't want to work in that sort of industry, or I don't want to work with those sorts of clients.
Yeah, I mean, in this space, the ad space and digital agencies, that has been the norm. And I think, Blair is a perfect example of someone who's on a mission to stop that. He's got, the Win Without Pitching Manifesto is really good. And you can read it for free online, dear listener. We'll put the link in the show notes. You can read it for free online. You can actually buy a hard copy of it. I recommend the hard copy. I actually love it. It's a cool little sort of, it reminds me of a religious text you might find in the back of a pew. It's very bombastic in that way. And that's about a mindset type of reshift. But he's also got a new book called Pricing Creativity, that is obviously for creatives who are probably of any industry that I can think of most familiar with pitching for free. And it goes on for 150 pages about exactly why you shouldn't do that, what to do instead, how to price your work. I mean, he and I are very much on the same page. He just focuses on creatives more so than I do. So, there is a path out of it, but I agree with you. It is considered a norm. And by refusing to respond to RFPs, then, you're definitely going to miss out on some work. But guess what? Those are probably not great clients if they view you as interchangeable with a bunch of different vendors, more or less interchangeable. It's very hard to get any kind of leverage in the negotiation process. You're basically, in that situation where you're so invested in the sales process because you spent the entire weekend, you pulled 2 all-nighters in a row to come in on Monday, do a pitch, and they're like, we kind of like your stuff, but, you're a little pricey and somebody else was a lot less. So yeah, we're going to go with somebody else. God. And then you're like, oh, well, wait a minute. How much would you, I'll match their price, because now you're desperate because you're so invested in the process. So if you let yourself get to invest, that's when you get angry at them, because you invest yourself in the process with some sort of, you feel there's an implied promise that some business will come out of it. It's like when someone says to you, oh, we're not going to pay you a lot on this project, but it's going to be great exposure, or we can't pay you a lot.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I so despise that.
Yeah.
And yet many, many clients say that or have said that to me over the years.
Yeah. Another one is, we can't pay you a lot, but we'll refer you to all our friends. I'm like, yeah, as a cheap option. Thanks. No, thanks.
I might mention this in the past that like in Israel, many, many companies have a purchasing department, and the purchasing department is not necessarily in charge of purchasing. They call you up to knock down your price. So what will often happen is I will agree with the training manager, like, okay, I'll come into your company, next Wednesday or a month from Wednesday, whatever it is. And everything's great. They say, okay, you'll next get a call from the purchasing department. When I get a call from them, I know what the next sentence is, which is, we'd love to work with you, but you're really expensive. Can you knock this down? And I think it's now been about 2 years that I've said no.
Right.
And there's stunned silence on the other end of the phone, because like in Israel, everything is negotiable. And like absolutely everything. And the notion that I get them they start to get desperate. They're like, please, like you have to, if I show this to my boss, like without a discount, like they won't let it go through. So I think about 6-8 months ago, I knocked like $10 a day off the price of training, like just to sort of like, and they said, okay, well, if that's the best you'll do, then fine. And I thought to myself, okay, if that'll make them happy, come on. But like they basically said, unless you give us something, and I think at some point they said like you won't go down at all. And I said, no. I said, I have other clients who are interested in the time. And if not, I have other things to work on.
Right.
And I don't think they just never heard this before. This was really shocking to them. So that's like the opposite of sounding desperate. And most cases, not all the time, actually, Yes, in all cases, now that I can think of it, they come around, they're like, okay, fine, we'll work with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has a lot to do with how you respond to that question. I think I have 9 examples of different types of discount requests. So in other words, I have a sort of short handbook called Learn Your Lines, in which I give you exact things to say, like the exact quotes to say when a client puts you on the spot, basically asks you a tough question, asks you for your hourly rate. What do you say when somebody asks you for your hourly rate? What do you say if someone asks you to commit to a deadline? What do you say if somebody asks you for a discount? And I came up with 9 different kinds of discount requests and had an answer for each different one. Like, oh yeah, we're a nonprofit though, so this can't be the nonprofit price, or we don't have budget. Can you do any better? Or, there's a million of them. And that's one of them, it is, the thing is, they'd be dumb not to ask because most people will cave. So, right. But it doesn't mean, dear listener, it doesn't mean you need to. And it's exactly like Reuven said. It's like, look, I'll give it some, whatever. It depends on how, if it's real time on the phone, then it would be like, I would say if it was real time on the phone, I'd be like, say something like, wow, I appreciate you asking and I do want your business, but I just can't make a case for lowering my price. I understand your situation and my price is fair. So if we can't, if we disagree about that, then I'll pass on the work. It's, you don't have to be a jerk. You can be polite about it, but firm. If it was over email, I would probably say, I'll give it, I gave it, when I get back to them after like a day, I would say, I gave it some thought and I just can't make a business case for this. I've got other people who are looking to hire me for this price. And, if you don't value it as much as they do, then I totally understand. It's fine.
There's also, by saying no, I won't discount, that then leads to them having some internal political tension, because the person who wanted my course, they still want the course. And they're then super ticked off that they're like, what? We don't have money? Like, so we'll put it toward X instead of Y. Like, we'll pay Reuven instead of paying some other schmo. But like, we have the money. We're just not like, and typically they want the course because they're desperate for this new knowledge that will allow their staff to do something new. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, now what? Right now we can't do what we want.
Yeah, now they have to go look for someone cheaper, which they're not going to. I mean, not that you're the least expensive option, but they're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to search someone out and find someone like, can we trust this person? We don't know if they're good. We know Reuven's good. Like, why are we going to do this? It's not worth the $10. Like, but you're right though. I mean, it's kind of silly not to ask for a discount. I've seen it happen in plenty of times, even in retail, like physical retail. I used to have a girlfriend who would religiously ask, hey, is this your best price? And almost without fail, we're talking about apartment rent, everything. And people would be like, I'll knock 10% off. I'll knock 20% off. For you.
Right.
Yeah. So people do it. So it is kind of silly not to ask, but it doesn't mean you have to comply. Another thing you can do is feel like, well, I can't make a business case for lowering my price, but if you guys are having a cash flow problem, then I'd be willing to talk about different payment terms and kind of put it back on them, like calling them like kind of intimating that they're acting like they're broke, and almost like as kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's kind of like, oh, well, if you guys are broke, then I'll work with you on the payment terms. And they'll be like, oh, well, we're not broke. Well, then why are you asking for a discount? Why are we fighting over $10 a day?
You just reminded me I have to get back to someone who basically is not broke, but they got cash flow issues. And he said, look, worst case, I guarantee you'll get paid personally. And I actually know that he's good for that.
Yeah.
So
I do stuff like that all the time. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, I'd be happy to do that if I trust the person. Someone the other day, he was trying to buy a digital product off my site, but he was from outside the U.S. credit card, his bank wouldn't allow that kind of a purchase, and so he was like, "Oh, bummer! I was hoping to be able to dive into this over the weekend, but I'm going to have to call my bank on Monday to get the thing charged, so I guess I can't read it over the weekend." Now, I don't know this person from a hole in the wall, But I said, don't worry about it. I'm sure you're good for it. You can pay me on Monday, and here's a free copy of all the stuff you're trying to buy. Big deal.
You could be sure that he's going to come back and buy stuff from you.
Yeah, and he did. And on Monday he paid. It was like, you know what I mean? It was like, fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Absolutely.
completely not. I don't think this is me trying to judge myself, which isn't easy, but I don't think I'm a mercenary at all. I just don't agree with certain approaches that I just stand for stuff, and I'm going to run the business the way I want to run my business. So if I am attracting clients who are constantly giving me a hard time about price or that sort of thing, then I know that it's incumbent on me to start attracting better clients. And how to do that is topic of many, many episodes, but that's the idea. And to pull it back to the original topic, I'm perfectly fine to give somebody, a few minutes to try and answer their question. 9 times out of 10, I'm probably going to say, well, it depends on a few things, but here are the best practices. So if you're really, really in need of help, these will help. But if you're already sophisticated enough to have these in place, then we should probably set something up formal.
Very good. I'll just add one last thing, that when we moved into our apartments, that's like 19 years ago, I guess now. So the neighbors came and were very nice and welcomed us to the building. It's like 8 families in our apartment building, so it's not such a huge building. And someone said, "Oh, I hear you work in computers. Like, do you think maybe you could help me?" And I said, "I would be so happy to help you. Absolutely. Just, I assume you don't have Windows, right? Because I only know about Unix." That was one of the smartest, best things I ever said. Never since then have I received a request for help from any of my neighbors. It's the best.
Yep. That's tough.
All right. I think we covered this pretty well. Anything else you want to add?
I think that was good. Yeah, I think we explored that pretty thoroughly.
So got any picks for this week?
For you, the listeners of Freelancer Show, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any new subscription at lootcrate.com. Just enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is one of my favorite things. Every month I get a box in the mail, costs less than $20, and it comes with all kinds of goodies. I have stuff from, just looking at my shelf, Batman, Spider-Man, Ninja Turtles, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and much, much more. So if you're a geek, a gamer, anything like that, and you want cool stuff to put around your office, cool t-shirts, comic books, etc., then definitely check out Loot Crate. To save 10% on your new subscription, go to lootcrate.com/Ruby. Again, that's lootcrate.com/Ruby to save 10% on any new subscription. Enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings.
I do. Mentioned a couple, so I've got a few since we mentioned a couple. We'll link to the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, which is winwithoutpitching.com, and Blair Enns. He is super. I basically agree with everything he says. So, and we're of a like mind on this, on pricing stuff. And he is a great resource for folks who feel that they have to pitch in order to win business. He will explain to you how wrong you are. Another thing I'd like to point people to, you mentioned Mad Men. There's a really good video. I think it's a little bit more of the mercenary approach, but it's a clip from the show Mad Men where Don Draper is talking to Conrad Hilton, and Conrad Hilton asks him for some free advice. And spoiler alert, Draper says no, but the way that he does, I thought he did it in a really, really good way. If you're going to say no, just flat out no, I thought it was pretty clever how he did it. Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that scene at all.
Yep.
Look.
It's pretty good. It's like, Connie, you're asking me to, this is what I do for a job. You're asking me to do it for free. He's like, yeah, just this one time. That kind of thing. So check that out. It's short. Also mentioned Learn Your Lines. You can check that out at, I don't know if I have a dedicated URL for that. You can go to expensiveproblem.com/ I don't even know. Go to expensiveproblem.com and search for Learn Your Lines. I don't know where it is. But yeah, it's a short book that is full of lines. Tells you what to say. here's their situation. This is what you say. And yeah, that's enough. I'll stop there. What about you, Rube?
So I've only got one pick for this week. So we've got 5 people in my family, my wife, me, and 3 kids. And of course, everyone has a cell phone. So I've often wondered, gee, wouldn't it be nice to know where everyone was? And my son, who's 12, was actually the one who pushed us to install this app, Life 360. And of course, in the wake of all the Facebook data breaches and so forth, I'm beginning to wonder what this company knows about me. But I guess I don't have anything to be embarrassed about for the time being. And the nice thing is that it's free. For free, you get like a family circle, and you know where everyone is. Well, assuming they have their cell phone with them. So it tells you not only where they are and whether they're moving or not, and it tells you like a location near there. So like my kids' schools and some of the places where I work, and it tells you how much battery life they have in their phone. So no longer do we need to have like, my wife call and say, "Oh my God, my phone's about to die." We can all see that and monitor, and it's actually I've been very impressed. It's a simple app, and I'm sure if we were to pay for it, we would get something more interesting out of it. But so far, for its purpose of knowing where my kids are and being able to check on these sorts of things, it's been highly effective. So definitely recommended.
My doctor uses that. You happen to mention that.
What this how does your doctor use it to keep track of all his patients?
No, it was his family. He knows I'm a mobile guy, so he's like, "Oh, have you seen this? I've been using this with my family. It's great." So there you go. 2 +1s.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Jonathan. And I just want to remind all of our listeners that if you have ideas, reactions, updates, suggestions, and so forth for our 300th episode, we would be delighted to get them. You can send them to...
jstark@jonathanstark.com.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone, and we'll be back next week on The Freelancer Show.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.